Imagine a command that makes obedience impossible. Someone looks you in the eye and demands that you be more spontaneous. This sounds like a simple request, but it is a psychological weapon. If you do nothing, you are not being spontaneous, and you fail. If you immediately do something wild and unpredictable, you are doing it because you were told to, so you are obedient, not spontaneous. You fail again. This is not just a frustrating conversation. It is a specific structural paradox known in psychology as the double bind. It is a situation where you are damned if you do and damned if you don't. Most men spend years of their lives trapped in these invisible cages, running on a hamster wheel of logic, trying to solve a puzzle that has no solution. You feel like you are losing your mind because your logical brain cannot process a command that negates itself. Today, we are going to dissect the anatomy of the double bind. We will look at why your standard tools of reason and argumentation are useless against it. We will explore why explaining yourself only pulls the knot tighter. Most importantly, we will discuss how to dismantle this trap using the philosophy of the cold mind. You will learn how to stop playing a rigged game and how to step outside the frame to regain your sanity and your authority. You are not broken, and you are not stupid. You have simply been handed a map where all roads lead to a dead end. It is time to burn the map. The concept of the double bind was first identified by the anthropologist and social scientist Gregory Bateson in the 1950s. He observed this pattern in families with severe communication dysfunction. The structure is simple, but devastating. It involves a primary injunction, usually a command to do or not do something. Then there is a secondary injunction that conflicts with the first one, but it is often abstract or nonverbal. Finally, there is a prohibition against leaving the field. You are not allowed to ignore the contradiction or walk away without facing severe social or emotional punishment. In a relationship, this often manifests as the classic paradox. If I have to ask you to do it, it doesn't count. Analyze that statement. It contains two conflicting demands. The first demand is the desire for a specific action, let's say washing the dishes or buying flowers. The second, hidden demand is that this action must be motivated solely by your own internal initiative. The moment the request is spoken, the possibility of satisfying the second demand is destroyed. You cannot retroactively generate the initiative for an action you have already been prompted to do. Yet, the expectation remains. You are expected to perform the action and simultaneously pretend that you were not told to perform it. When you fail to achieve this impossible feat of mental gymnastics, you are labeled as unromantic, uncaring, or emotionally unintelligent. This creates a state of intense cognitive dissonance. The male brain, which typically favors linear cause and effect logic, begins to overheat. You think that if you just explain your side clearly enough, she will see the contradiction. You say that you are happy to do the task now that you know she wants it. You think this is a reasonable compromise, but you are met with anger or disappointment. You are met with the accusation that you are doing it just to shut her up. And technically, that is true, because you are responding to the external pressure. The trap is perfect. Your logic is valid, but it is irrelevant, because the game is not about the task. The game is about the impossibility of the setup. Why does this happen? Often, it is not a calculated act of malice. It is a symptom of anxiety and a lack of direct communication skills. People resort to double binds when they are afraid to ask for what they need directly, or when they want to test the strength of the bond. They want reassurance that you are attuned to them telepathically. They want to feel that you and they are one mind. When you fail to read the mind, they feel isolated. To bridge that gap, they issue a command. But the command itself proves the isolation exists, which increases the anxiety, leading to a tighter double bind. It is a feedback loop of misery. The danger for the man is that he internalizes this failure. If you are exposed to double binds for a long period, you develop a condition called learned helplessness. You stop trying to succeed because your brain learns that effort does not correlate with reward. You become passive. You walk on eggshells. You constantly scan the environment for the next trap. This destroys your frame. A man who is afraid of making the wrong move has no charisma. He has no polarity. He becomes a shadow of himself, desperately trying to appease a paradox. This behavior only accelerates the loss of respect. To escape the double bind, you must understand that you cannot win within the context of the bind. You cannot solve the problem on the level where it was created. Logic is a tool for solving linear problems. A double bind is a circular problem. Using logic here is like trying to use a screwdriver to hammer a nail. It is the wrong tool. The harder you twist, the more you strip the screw. You must stop arguing about the content of the request and start addressing the structure of the communication. This is called meta-communication. It means talking about the talking. When you are hit with the "if I have to ask, it doesn't count" paradox, your instinct is to defend your intent. You want to say that you love her and you want to do it. Resist that instinct. Instead, you must calmly identify the trap. You step back and look at the mechanism.
You might say that you notice a setup where you lose no matter what you do. You explain that if you ignore the request, you are negligent, but if you fulfill the request, you are dismissed as compliant. You state clearly that this is a game with no winning move, and you are not willing to play it. This requires a massive amount of internal frame. You must be willing to endure the short-term spike in tension. When you call out the paradox, the other person will often escalate. They will accuse you of being difficult or overanalyzing. They will try to pull you back into the content of the argument. They will say it is not about the logic, it is about how they feel. Do not take the bait. Hold your ground on the structure. You can validate the feeling without accepting the paradox. You can say that you understand they feel unheard, but you cannot fix that feeling through a task that has been rendered meaningless by the request itself. Let us look at applied insights in everyday scenarios. The "be spontaneous" trap is a classic. Maybe it is a Friday night and you are tired. You are told that you never plan anything fun anymore. You are told to be more adventurous. If you immediately suggest a restaurant, it is rejected because you only suggested it after being prompted. The high-value response is not to frantically Google restaurants. The high-value response is to acknowledge the underlying need without submitting to the impossible demand. You might say that you hear the desire for adventure, but demanding spontaneity kills it. Then you disengage. You do not plan the date right then. You wait. You wait until the frame has reset, and then you lead. You lead when the initiative is yours again. Another common double bind is the "open up" trap. You are told that you act too cold and need to share your feelings. But history has taught you that when you share vulnerable feelings, they are used against you, or you are seen as weak. So the command is "be vulnerable," but the punishment for vulnerability is a loss of status. The safe practice here is to differentiate between vulnerability and weakness. You can share your perspective without collapsing your frame, but if you sense the trap, you simply refuse the premise. You do not have to open up on command. You are not a vending machine where someone presses a button and emotions fall out. You share when you decide it serves the relationship, not when you are pressured to prove you have a soul.
The power of the meta-commentary technique lies in its neutrality. You are not yelling. You are not crying. You are observing. You act like a scientist looking at a strange experiment. You say that you feel like you are in a loop. By naming the loop, you break its power. The double bind relies on being invisible. It relies on you accepting the premise that you are the one who is failing. When you point at the trap and say that it is a trap, the mechanism jams. The other person is forced to either admit the contradiction or change the subject. Either way, you have escaped the cage. You must also recognize the non-verbal double binds. Sometimes a person says, "Come here," with their words, but pushes you away with their body language. Or they say, "I'm fine," with a tone that screams they are furious. The average man responds to the words because he wants the easy way out. He hears, "I am fine," and goes back to watching television. Then he is ambushed later. The cold-mind philosopher responds to the signal, not the noise. If the tone contradicts the words, the tone is the truth. You address the tone. You say that their words say one thing, but their voice says another. You ask which one you should believe. You bring the contradiction into the light. There is a concept in dark psychology called the illusion of alternatives. A magician asks you to pick a card, but he forces the card he wants you to pick.
The double bind is similar. It offers you two choices, compliance or rebellion. Both are wrong. Compliance proves you are weak. Rebellion proves you don't care. The Sigma mindset creates a third option. The third option is the refusal to choose. You walk away from the table. You say that you will discuss this when the paradox is removed. You say that you are happy to do things for the relationship, but you will not do them as a performance to prove you are intuitive. This requires you to be comfortable with being the bad guy for a moment. You must be willing to be called unromantic. You must be willing to be called logical and cold. Wear those labels like armor. Being logical is not a sin. Being cold is often necessary to put out the fire of emotional chaos. When you stop frantically trying to please, you signal high status. You signal that your reality is stable. You are not swept away by the storm of someone else's confusion. Ironically, this stability is often exactly what the anxious partner is looking for, even though they are testing it with these impossible traps. Safe practices for handling this involve checking your own pulse. When you feel that familiar sensation of confusion and frustration, stop. Do not speak. Do not promise to do better. Do not apologize. That frustration is your dashboard warning light. It tells you that you have entered a double bind. Take a deep breath. Visualize the mechanism. See the two conflicting commands. Remind yourself that you cannot solve this with more effort. Then, speak to the pattern. Use phrases like, "I am sensing a setup where I lose either way." Or, "I want to make you happy, but I cannot do that if the rules of the game make success impossible." You should also practice the art of the reset. If a conversation spirals into a paradox, you have the right to end the conversation. You can say that you are going to take a walk and clear your head. You remove yourself from the field. Remember that the double bind includes a prohibition against leaving the field. By leaving, you shatter the third wall of the trap. You demonstrate that you are a free agent. You are not a prisoner of the interaction. This act of walking away is often the most powerful communication of all. It resets the dynamic. It forces the other person to sit with their own paradox. There is a myth that you can love your way out of these traps. People believe that if they are just patient enough and kind enough, the double binds will stop. This is false. High availability and limitless patience often reinforce the behavior. If you stay in the trap and keep trying to solve it, you validate the method. You teach people that this is an effective way to interact with you. You teach them that they can offload their anxiety onto you, and you will carry it. You must break the cycle. You must show that your mind is a place of order, and you do not allow disordered communication to take root there. Let's look at a concrete before and after example. The old version of you forgets an anniversary. She says, "I don't even want a gift now. The moment is ruined." You panic. You rush out and buy an expensive gift. You present it. She looks at it with disdain and says, "You only bought this because you felt guilty." You argue that it's a great gift. You fight all night. You feel exhausted and unappreciated. Now, look at the man with the cold mind. The same situation occurs. She says, "I don't even want a gift now." He pauses. He absorbs the blow. He does not scramble. He says, "I understand you are hurt, and I take responsibility for forgetting. However, I will not buy a gift just to have it rejected. I will make this up to you in my own way, on my own time, when we are both calm." He holds the frame. He acknowledges the error without stepping into the trap of the guilt gift. He retains his dignity. He does not let the error become a permanent stain on his character. This approach is not about winning an argument. It is about preserving the sanity of the relationship. Double binds drive people crazy, literally. Gregory Bateson developed this theory while studying schizophrenia. He believed that constant exposure to these paradoxes caused the mind to fracture. By refusing to participate in them, you're performing an act of mental hygiene. You're keeping the environment clean. You are insisting on honest, direct communication. I want X. I feel Y. These are statements you can work with. Be the person who wants X without me asking is a fantasy that destroys reality. The takeaway is that you are the gatekeeper of your own perception. You decide what counts. If you do something good for your partner or your team, and they say it doesn't count because of some arbitrary rule about spontaneity or mind reading, you do not have to accept that judgment. You know your intent. You know your action. You validate yourself. Do not outsource your reality testing to someone who is currently trapped in an emotional loop. Ask yourself this question: how much energy have I wasted trying to solve puzzles that were designed to have no solution? How many times have I apologized for failing a test that I was never meant to pass? The exit door is right in front of you. It is not locked. It just requires you to stop looking at the distraction and start looking at the structure. When the game is rigged, the only winning move is to change the rules. Step back, speak the truth about the trap, and never apologize for being unable to do the impossible.